birthday. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Previously undisclosed eyewitness video of the killing of a Mexican immigrant by U.S. border officers 2 years ago has sparked fresh calls for justice in the case and renewed scrutiny of what critics call a culture of impunity. In May 2010, 32-year-old Anastasio Hernández Rojas was caught trying to enter the United States from Mexico near San Diego. Hernández Rojas had previously lived in the United States for 25 years from the age of 15. He was the father of 5 U.S.-born children. But instead of deportation, Hernández Rojas's detention ended in his death. A number of officers were seen beating him before one tasered him at least 5 times. During the incident, Hernández Rojas was handcuffed and hogtied. He died shortly after. The agents say they confronted Hernández Rojas because he became hostile and resisted arrest. But new video recorded by eyewitnesses on their cell phones show a different story. The footage was obtained by reporter John Carlos Frey and aired in a national special Friday night as part of a joint investigation by the PBS broadcast Need to Know and the Investigative Fund of the Nation Institute.
Please. Senors, help me.
What U.S. border agents did not realize is that eyewitness videos of the incident caught the sounds of Hernández Rojas screaming and pleading for his life.
No. Help.
And now, a never-before-seen eyewitness video of the incident raises new, disturbing questions. The dark video reveals more than a dozen U.S. border agents standing over Hernández Rojas. It shows the firing of the taser. Was Hernández Rojas, as the police press release suggested, combative when he was killed? Or was he on the ground, handcuffed?
That was PBS Need to Know reporter John Larson. Along with reporter John Carlos Frey, they later found a second eyewitness who used her phone to document the beating of Anastasio Hernández Rojas.
Took the video to Gene Iredale, the Hernández Rojas attorney, who had never seen it before. He said the critical moment is this one.
When you're using force and you know you have to explain it or it has to appear some way to the people who are watching, you say, quit resisting.
You can watch the full report in English or Spanish online at pbs.org/needtoknow. The San Diego County Police Department and the county's medical examiner ruled Hernández Rojas' death a homicide. But the U.S. attorney says a coroner's report found methamphetamine in his body and said the agent's action was appropriate in responding to, quote, out-of-control conduct. An agency spokesperson told Reuters the agency does not, quote, tolerate abuse within our ranks, and we fully cooperate with any criminal or administrative investigations of alleged misconduct by any of our personnel on or off duty, unquote. In a minute, we will speak with Hernández Rojas' widow, María Puga. But first, we're joined in Los Angeles by John Carlos Frey, the documentary filmmaker and investigative journalist at the Nation Institute who broke the story called Crossing the Line at the Border. He's tracking at least 8 other deaths of immigrants at the hands of Border Patrol agents in the past 2 years and recently wrote an editorial for the Los Angeles Times called What's Going On with the Border Patrol? We're also joined in San Diego by Umberto Navarrete, who was an eyewitness to Border Patrol officers beating Anastasio Hernández Rojas. And we welcome you both to Democracy Now! John Carlos Frey, why don't you start by going through this story with us? We're talking about a killing that occurred 2 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. Anastasio Hernández Rojas was caught trying to cross back into the United States. He was detained by Border Patrol agents, went through the detention process, and in the process of being deported, this is when the story really begins. The Border Patrol agents, via their own press release and documents, say that he was combative. Hernández Rojas was combative. They removed his handcuffs. This is actually the document. They removed his handcuffs and applied the use of a taser. He fell to the ground, suffered a heart attack, and subsequently died. That is what is actually in the police report. But the new video and eyewitness testimony proves otherwise. He was handcuffed. He was hogtied. He was not combative. The taser was applied at least 5 times. He was kicked. He was beaten. He suffered 5 broken ribs, bruises and cuts all over his body, misaligned teeth. None of that is in the official report.
Now, can you go back even further? Because hadn't he brought some kind of charge against one of the officers involved here?
During the detention process, he, by his very right, even though he was an undocumented immigrant, had asked for medical attention. He said that one of the officers, while in detention, had kicked his ankle where he had surgery several years prior. He had some metal pins in his ankle, so he was actually in excruciating pain. He also asked the Border Patrol officers for his day in court, which is also his legal right as an undocumented immigrant, and both of those requests were denied. He was actually just taken to the border by 2 agents, which is a very rare occurrence, 2 agents taking one man by himself to the border to deport him. And that's when the melee started.
Now, talk about what the investigation, the official investigation has been, and what you did, John Carlos Frey, over this last 2 years, what you have managed to uncover.
The official investigation is basically what I said. The San Diego Police Department investigated. They basically said that they were within their right. The Justice Department has gone no further. We have uncovered eyewitness testimony. We've uncovered videotapes. The Justice Department has not asked any of the eyewitnesses for this information. They have not requested the videotapes. The statements coming from the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security is basically sealed. They are standing by their decision to support the officers and the way they conducted themselves during this event. And as I said, they're not even interested, at least at this point, in taking a look at the videotape. And the eyewitnesses in question, we've uncovered 3 of them. The Justice Department hasn't even spoken to them. So from our knowledge, it looks like the Justice Department has done absolutely nothing in investigating this case. They've taken the San Diego Police Department report verbatim and have done no more work on it. We've actually done the work for them.
Talk about the 3 different videos you got, because a number of people who were doing phone video at the time, and you could explain the scene there at the border, how people were watching this, had their phones confiscated?
Yes, that's actually been corroborated by several different eyewitnesses. There's an eyewitness south of the border in Tijuana who we recorded. There's another individual who was on the U.S. side on the ground watching what was happening, also recording. And there was another individual on a pedestrian bridge. So they had a bird's eye view. And that seems to be the video that's most damning that we can see. It was evening. It was very hard to see. The cell phone cameras didn't record very well. But all eyewitnesses that we spoke to basically tell the same story of a man hogtied and handcuffed behind his back, not resisting, being beaten repeatedly by batons, by kicks, by punches, by the use of a taser for almost 30 minutes until he died. Officers tried to administer CPR, and then they called an ambulance, and he was pronounced dead in the hospital.
I want to turn to Umberto Navarrete's eyewitness video, taken the night of Anastasio Hernández Rojas' death. Can you start off by explaining who Umberto is, what position he had in relation to the beating and the tasering and the death of Hernández Rojas?
Sure. In the area where this happened, it's in a secure area very close to the U.S.-Mexico border line itself, right next to where pedestrians cross in and out of Tijuana, Mexico. It is a heavily trafficked area. It's a public area. Umberto Navarrete found himself there as a tourist to Tijuana for the day, coming back. He heard the cries of Anastasio Hernández Rojas in Spanish, "Ayúdame, por favor," ayúdame, which in English means, help me, please, help me. This was a man who was crying desperately for help. This attracted Umberto's attention. He pulled out his cell phone camera and started to record. He actually is a resident of San Diego, California, had spent 4 years in the National Guard, had also spent a couple of years working for the San Diego Trolley as a security guard, so he knew something about security. He actually confronted the Border Patrol officers and the officers that were around, asking them, you can hear it on the tape, asking them, why are you holding this man down? He's not resisting. Why do you keep pressing on him? he clearly saw that the man was not resisting and was handcuffed.
We actually are joined by Umberto Navarrete right now, and before we go to his eyewitness video, I want to bring him in from San Diego, and in a few minutes we'll be joined by Hernández Rojas's widow, María Puga. But Umberto, continue where John has left off, how you ended up there on the border, and how you ended up taking this video of the beating and tasering of Hernández Rojas.
Good morning. As John mentioned, I was on my way heading to Tijuana, and that's when the first thing that I heard was Anastasio screaming at the top of his lungs, asking for help. And when I got to a more closer area, I saw what just John described, Anastasio face down in handcuffs, and two officers on uniform, and there were 5 officers in the near area. Right there when I started recording, 2 uniform officers. One of them had one of his knees on Anastasio's neck. The other officer had the other knee on Anastasio's lower back. I started noticing all these details, and the most important thing was that Anastasio was not resisting, and that's when I decided to pull out my cell phone and start recording what you can see on the first videos, and that's when I started recording. John also mentioned that I also saw an officer, and I approached him and I asked him, why were they using what I consider to be excessive force, and I asked him why were they continue to press on him, what I saw, what they were pressing him to the ground. I had to stop recording because my memory got full, and stopped recording and deleted some of my personal videos. And by the time of the last on my last video, by that time Anastasio was picked up and then they took him more towards the back. That's when you can see the other video where at that point there were I counted more than 20 officers. Not necessarily around Anastasio, but counting the other officers that were running up and down. The other officer that I confronted, I counted more than 20 officers in the near area where Anastasio was later picked up and dragged to a farther area where I was not able to record or to record anymore.
Umberto, I want to play the footage that you got on your cell phone. It's dark, but people should listen carefully who are listening on the radio, watch carefully who are watching this on television. In this footage, Hernández Rojas is crying out in pain and repeatedly pleading for his life.
Hey, she's not resisting. Why are you guys using excessive force on him? I don't know what's going on over there. Huh? Obviously he's doing something. He ain't not cooperating.
That was the videotape taken by Umberto Navarrete. It's through bars, a kind of gate, and we are simply hearing Hernández Rojas's, what turns out to be some of his last pleas for help. Umberto, explain what happened, and did you see people having their phones confiscated? How did you keep yours?
I did not see anybody, any other agents. I was, like I said, I was concentrated on the cell phone and try to record as much as possible. I wasn't paying attention. I do remember there was an agent that told me that I couldn't be recording at that area. As soon as I turned around and I pointed my cell phone at him, he turned around and ignored me, and I continued recording. And I do remember this officer telling me that I wasn't able to record at that area. But like I said, as soon as I turned my cell phone towards him, he turned around and ignored me.
You're a former National Guardsman, Umberto?
Yes.
Why did you decide to come forward? This happened 2 years ago.
Why? I got, like John mentioned, I have some security, that's a security level training, and I decided that something was wrong there. I saw something was not right, something was wrong at that moment, so that's why I decided to contact the media and give the videos to the family and the family lawyers.
We contacted ICE and the Border Patrol. They told us to call the Department of Homeland Security. We didn't get a response from them. PBS Need to Know, the program that did this big expose called the Department of Justice, they said they wouldn't comment because they're in the middle of an investigation. Have you been contacted by government authorities, Umberto, for your videotape, for your eyewitness testimony?
Not by any federal agencies, but I did get interviewed by the San Diego police, which I believe they have they were doing the investigation. And
when were you interviewed by them?
That happened on the next day when I released the videos. This happened a week after Anastasio's beating down at the border.
Umberto Navarrete, I want to thank you for being with us. John Carlos Frey, we'd like to ask you to stay with us. When we come back from break, we'll also be joined by Anastasio Hernández Rojas' widow, María Puga. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Back in 30 seconds.